Thanks. I'm giving Matt a well-deserved break. I will chair this session since I know the least about the topic. Let's start by introducing everybody, then we'll talk about what DevOps is and then dive into the details. So I'm Jonathan Amsterdam, and my connection with DevOps is that I wrote Slog, the Go standard, the structured logging package in the standard library. I also have carried a pager on a few projects. Okay, I'll pass it over to Johnny. Well, I don't have to pass it. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Johnny Borsiquot. Been in the industry for 25 plus years now, so I may not look it, but I'm an old hat. Yeah, I've had so many roles, even before we started calling it DevOps, even before if we had a name for it. I used to do what is now known as DevOps, or a fancier term now, SRE and whatnot. So as these things have evolved over the years, picked up some new tricks. But yeah, been doing a lot of the things, a lot of the times.
I'm actually younger than I look. I actually look older than I am.
Is that an opinion of yourself, or?
Yeah.
Oh, it's on. If you didn't, yeah.
Yeah, so I've been building products and apps and things for years, and you sort of have to operate them. And what's really annoying is when they become successful, and then you really have to operate them, and it gets a lot harder. So, top tip, don't build successful stuff. It's way easier.
How can I top that? But okay. So hi, I'm Hila Fish. I'm a senior DevOps engineer. I started out my career as a system engineer, and then evolved to the DevOps role, even though we will probably talk about it. It didn't start out as a job description. It's a culture that basically DevOps engineers are meant to carry out this culture. And I actually can share the bits of how the term was coined at 2009. I know the story, so I can share it in a bit. Yeah, mostly doing a lot of DevOps stuff and enabling developers to make the software development lifecycle more efficient. Love my job, very diverse, and yeah.
Cheers.
Okay.
Thanks.
So let's talk first about what DevOps is. My theory is it's a shortening of DevOps. You develop something, oops, it crashed in production, what now? Anybody want to improve on that?
For me, dev, the fact that it's a blending of the words dev and ops, developer and operations, is putting those responsibilities into one function. And to me that was important because it's this idea, and this is different across the industry, honestly. But if you build something and you run it, you're responsible for running it. You're going to make trade-offs that are important when it comes to like adding features. There might be a feature that users really want, but it adds a lot of complexity, or you can't do it reliably or something. And then you have to sort of balance that, and you're sort of thinking of the whole picture, rather than I'm just going to build this thing whatever I want and throw it over the wall and it's someone else's problem. So this was about making it your problem, developer's problem, and the benefit being you then pay attention to it and build things that makes the operating it easier.
The problem is you build it, now you're expected to run it, but it's a slightly different skill set. So if I tell a developer, if I tell my team, hey, you've just built this thing, you have to now run it. Now I'm also telling them, you have to go learn how to run it. So how do I support you, right, in that endeavor?
So actually, two things about that. First of all, I do have a T-shirt that says DevOps Engineer. I do have it.
That was quick. When did you get that printed?
Not actually a company printed it. There's a company in a conference, they delivered it, and I'm like, yeah, I want to take it. So that. In terms of you build your own, the thing with DevOps, it's get implemented different in different companies. So some companies say that we want the DevOps engineers to have a very strong development background in order to carry out the responsibilities, and then you build your own, it probably will be done by that. But a lot of other DevOps engineers are like myself, from system background. I didn't do much development, mostly the infrastructure maintenance. And then it's easy for me to both grasp the idea of you build it and I run it, because this is how I used to do things. And the whole idea of DevOps in general is how I like to say it. As a system admin, every time a developer came to me and wanted to do X, I said no, not me, but other system admins. Like, because we had this notion of we are the gatekeepers, we want to make sure that we know exactly what runs in production, and we don't want to rock the boat too much. And the idea for me of DevOps is like, how can I tell you yes? Like, how can I make it beneficial for you to do anything that you want, and not bring the pain points to you, but take out your pain points and deal with them by any means necessary.
And you were going to tell us how that phrase got coined in 2009?
Sure. So 2009, there was 2 people involved, basically Patrick Dubois, who is considered to be the father of DevOps, but he's not the only one, and Andrew Clay Schaefer, which was the co-founder and the one that built Puppet, which is one of infrastructure's code tools. So they met in events and stuff. There wasn't even DevOps Days event back then. They met in events, and then Andrew was in the same conference as Patrick. They were in like an agile conference, and Andrew tweeted in 2009, the first time the word DevOps got tweeted. He tweeted like, saying no means that you don't respect other people's problems. And then he tweeted it, and then he put like hashtag DevOps. Patrick saw this tweet, and then he was already in the midst of organizing an event in Belgium. In Belgium, and then he saw the tweet and said, okay, I like this notion, let's call this event DevOps Days. And then this is how it all started. So even though if you Google it, you'll see that Patrick Dubois is considered to be the father of DevOps, but no, Andrew Clay Schaefer has a very big role in that as well.
Okay. So we have the general idea that if you build something, you have to run it, that the SREs the gatekeepers want to be able to say yes to developers instead of saying no all the time. But what is it, let's dive into that. What does it look like on the ground, day to day, for a developer to be in an organization that has a DevOps culture?
Depends on your culture.
So my impression was DevOps is a kind of culture. It's a choice
It's
to...
the culture.
It's what?
It started out as a culture. People that does DevOps and say, yeah, I'm a DevOps engineer just because they do automation stuff, but they don't collaborate with anyone, they don't communicate what they did, they are not DevOps. They're not doing DevOps. Just because they're doing automation doesn't mean that you're doing DevOps. The whole idea of a notion of DevOps means that you collaborate and communicate whatever you need to communicate, make the software development lifecycle much more efficient, and the way you do it is by automation tools. But you can't do one without the other. You can't say, yeah, I'm an awesome DevOps engineer and do a lot of automation stuff, but you do it by yourself and nobody knows what you're doing, and you're the only one to maintain something because you didn't even offboard it to your team, stuff like that. So it has to come together.
But some companies are hiring people to just take on that role. So I don't expect, often I don't expect a hiring manager, perhaps who's not technical or doesn't understand what DevOps actually is, right, to know and understand the difference, to know that, okay, I'm bringing somebody in to be part operator, but also part communicator, right, because communication plays a huge role in DevOps, obviously. So, but a lot of companies who do not understand that, frankly, nor do they need to on some level, right? They hire folks to just say, okay, take on that role, please, because we have to worry about the business. We don't need to know any of this stuff. So it is on you, the person who's been hired to actually facilitate this process, to then train people internally even at times. I might have to say, hey, it's not just ship it over the wall and just leave it to one person to just go and figure all the things. This is going to be sort of a company-wide or at least department-wide effort.
Okay, so I'm confused. So if DevOps is the idea that the people who run the systems in production and the people who write the systems are communicating with each other, that's two separate roles, the developers and the SREs, the software reliability engineers, which is what we call them at Google, and in that book that was published about it, where these people don't necessarily, if they code, they're coding for software reliability. They're not coding the main applications, and their job is to run make sure they run well. So you would still have two separate roles that just communicate. So what does it mean to have a role that's a DevOps engineer?
So this could be something that's unique. At Grafana, this is what we do. We don't have dedicated ops people. We have the teams that build the thing, run it. You're on call for it. You have to care about what instrumentation you're doing in your code so that you have the right insights and set up your alerts and your on-call schedules. And that's the Grafana, and that could be, I don't know, how many people operate like that in their company?
No SRE role at all.
No specific, yeah. And then how many people do it the other way where you have dedicated ops people? So I would say that's about split. There's a lot of people didn't put their hands up. I don't know what the other option is, like 5 people?
In Google, we do it both ways. The teams will develop and the development team will carry the pagers initially, maybe forever, but there's a certain threshold at which our dedicated SRE people will get involved. And the threshold is, I don't know exactly, but let's say it's like less than 1 page a month. So you have to show that your service is already reliable enough for the organization to take it on, and that reduces the load on that SRE organization. And I couldn't tell you what fraction of products are SRE supported versus self-supported, but it's a mixture.
But I suppose regardless of whether it's one role or split across, it's still the same. You've got to balance, like you were saying, Hila, you've got to balance operational work with feature work and make sure that you are innovating while still being reliable. And they're sometimes at odds with each other, those two ideas. You could make an extremely reliable system by just building it really well and just don't change it. So if you really want it to be stable, don't change it. But usually we've got to do work. We've got new ideas, or we've got new things we learn, or new features, new ideas we want to implement.
That's another distinction I have in terms of what's the difference between a system admin and a DevOps engineer. System admin advocates for if it works, don't touch it. And DevOps engineer says, if it works, great, now let's see how can it work better. So this is the idea. So there is a shared responsibility. I mean, let's say in an ideal world, on-call should be both for developers and the ops engineers, and then it really depends on the issue. So if the issue, the root cause is in the infrastructure, then the ops people should handle it. But if the issue is with something bug in the code, then you should handle it, So there should be a triage of issues, and if there are incidents or alerts that you can set up that will go directly to developers because you know that 100% of the times the developers should handle it, then it should go directly to them. But on-call should be a shared responsibility. Also, building the dashboards, don't worry, they build it in Grafana, okay? No other tools. So building the dashboards, building the alerts should be a shared responsibility because we want to achieve the same thing, to have a reliable system, and each party have its way of dealing with it and make sure it is reliable.
Yeah, I saw one customer that had basically too many alerts, and this is very common. You end up, there's just alerts of firing, and really, you want to get on top of that and make sure that's not happening. It's better to have, spend the time and invest the time so that when an alert fires, it's meaningful. If you have, it's a bit like when you have loads of lint errors. One more lint error is, what's that compared to, you've already got 50. You sort of don't care. Whereas if you have 0, and then you get a lint error, that's a thing. That's like a big
Infinitely
thing.
more.
Yeah, it's infinitely more lint errors. So it's in the same way, like with alerts, it's better to really put the time in to make sure that your alerts are meaningful. And we did have this customer where that just wasn't an option because they were so big and they just hadn't been doing this along the way. So instead they had an alert that was just tracking how many alerts were firing. So then when that was too much, they were like, 1 million alerts is a bit high. So then they would take action. So it's kind of, but yeah, quite a creative solution, I suppose, to that problem. Actually, they used AI. In Grafana Labs, they have this AI prediction thing. So you can follow seasonality because, of course, sometimes for food delivery companies, you get a lot of busy activity at lunchtime and dinner time, and then in midnight it's quiet. Oh, this is the phone. Someone.
Is that a page?
Could be.
That sounds like a
Have
page.
I got to go and work? I don't want to be on call for... Am I on call now? Because I've got this. How's that happened? Oh, yeah, so they use AI to predict what was a normal amount. What was a normal amount of alerts. And so even if the alerts dropped, they were worried because it meant some systems had gone down. It's amazing. I don't know what we're doing, but I love that. What do you think about that, Johnny? Like, when you have alerts and, how do you decide?
I don't have alerts. All right, perfect systems.
Even better. But does that mean you can't change them, though?
Yeah, I ship them and that's it. I'm done. I'm out of here.
Yeah. Yeah. Because actually, like with, we have like SLOs, like service level objectives, and SLIs and things, which often are contractual and things. Like the 4 nines. We're going to be 99.999. That's 5, isn't it, Jonathan? Yes. Okay.
Yes, it is.
Well spotted.
5.
Off by 1 error. The...
Six Sigma is what you're saying. Or
Thank
6.
you. So you have the, this. You're saying like we're going to have this amount of uptime, which means you have some budget for downtime or for errors. You have like error budgets, and this is a concept that we have in Grafana Labs. I think this also came out of Google.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah, and so the idea is we're allowed to break it a bit, and not enough so that customers are going to be like, oh, I can't rely on this software. But if you need to be able to, if you want to innovate, you need to be able to break it and spend some of that error budget. And actually at Grafana, if you're SLO, if you're like 100%, the CTO will come and say, you aren't innovating enough. That's a sign that you aren't innovating enough, probably.
That's a luxury. I think that's a luxury. Not all of us work in organizations that sort of value that mindset. For a business, right, where a 0.5% drop, right, or increase in error rate, right, could translate to hundreds of thousands of dollars, right. I'm going to have a hard time convincing, the CIO, CTO, CFO, the C-suite, right, that error budgets are a good thing. Like we want errors, right? They can then, and they're thinking, no, we don't want errors because that's bottom line, that's dollars, right? Yeah. So I think it's a luxury at times for some of us, even in this room, to sort of adopt that notion, even if we'd like to, because yes, innovation. That also means risk, and risk translates to cost.
Let me represent the people that are not managers here, okay? Show of hands, people that actually know what the SLOs of their services. Okay? Just for you to know. It's not something that is really communicated to the people that actually manage incidents in the day-to-day. So whenever we have incidents, we're just like, we have to fix it right now, because we have no idea how much time we are allowed to be in downtime, how much we should be, or nothing of that sort. It doesn't go down to the people that actually do the hands-on. So this is something that is really important to mention here.
Yeah, but I think you should do that, though. I think that you should bring it to
should, but
yeah.
Does it happen?
It does in Grafana, and I'm starting to realize I might be.
Are you hiring?
It might be. But Johnny, like to your point, I agree. They would look at that and think, we don't want to lose hundreds of thousands of dollars, so we're not going to do it. So what's the alternative? We're going to be extremely careful, and we're going to take longer to deliver things, and then on any future revenue, the opportunity cost, that's where we lose instead. And that could be massive compared to these smaller peanuts of these error budgets that you're spending to get there.
But nobody's tracking the cost of not innovating, right?
Yeah.
Because the business it's there, right? But nobody's willing to acknowledge it. And nobody's tracking it. Nobody's going to come back and says, well, you know what? That chance we didn't take, well, competitor X just delivered something, they got to market faster than we did, right? Nobody's making that argument because then you might get fired because it's like, well, why didn't you do something about it if you could see ahead of time, right? So it's not in anybody's best interest to point out what the company did wrong.
So that is different in Grafana again, because We are celebrated for exactly that, like those kinds of things. And it's really about, like, if you have a blameless culture, this is why it's culture. It really is culture. If you have a truly blameless culture, you know, declaring an incident can be quite a scary thing in some organizations, because it's like, I'm going to be in trouble because something's gone wrong. In Grafana, you're celebrated for declaring incidents. We celebrate the top incident declarers and things like this. You know, because...
Are you hiring?
It will be a recurring gag, I think, in the entire panel if you're hiring.
So talk more about this blamelessness thing. What is that about?
Yeah, so this is just, now obviously something's somebody's fault when you've pushed some code that's got a bug in it, or, you know, and honestly, like at scale, like Johnny said, at scale, it can just be a simple little bug in your Go code can turn into an enormous problem, for sure. So it is really, if you look at it, it is somebody's fault. But if the culture just doesn't think of it like that, if it is just, well, this thing's happened, what can we do to stop this from happening again? How can we prevent this? What systems can we put in place, or additional testing, or additional automation to make this not happen again?
But outside of Grafana, there is the notion of postmortems, and it should always be blameless.
Right.
So it's not related only to Grafana. Every time there is an incident, we just need to know how can we improve, how can we detect the issues, and if something happened, we always talk in a we, and then nobody specific gets blamed. And note for you all, if your company does have an incident, a post-mortem, which is blameful, or they say, yeah, it's blameless, and then they point fingers, check elsewhere and work in other places, because it shouldn't be like that.
I think another way to say it is, yes, there is blame to be assigned, but maybe it's to processes, not people. Something in our process went wrong. And by process, it might not be a program. It might be, you know, an informal process between people. It might not be necessarily a piece of software. But something in our process went wrong, and that's, as you said, the postmortem tells you how to improve the processes.
Yeah, I had a case once where somebody changed...
Was that at Grafana?
No, I'm not...
Have you had any other jobs at all? Have you done anything else in your life?
Actually, in mostly startups, and I think this might tell you something about why I haven't had the luxury of somebody else running it. I do love the idea of not having to run stuff myself. But in startups, you just sort of have to do a bit of everything. And that turns out to be quite good for you, I think. So I think everyone should be in a startup at some point if you haven't. Like,
agreed.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. It's different. It's good.
Or in a company where they have, like, a small team can act a little bit like a startup.
Yes, autonomous.
That's the best, because then you don't have to fund yourself. You just have to do work.
Yeah.
So I'm noticing a pattern, right? I think we keep pointing to sort of culture, right? And culture, when I hear culture, I'm hearing people, right? So I've been doing this for long enough to have seen countless tools, right, and processes, and methodologies, and sort of rules, do's and don'ts. Like, I see this stuff come out time and time again. Everybody's trying to find the right mixture of things to do and to improve, you know, sort of the DevOps experience. But at some point, I think if I join an organization and there isn't a culture there, at least that is open to change, right? To working towards the idealism of DevOps, right? Then it's an uphill battle. Even if I would like, right, to benefit from, or to introduce the benefits that DevOps can bring, right, to the organization, I guess my question is, whose job is it, right, to sort of push this culture forward? Is it me, who just got hired as a junior engineer, junior DevOps, and trying to convince the higher-ups? Or should that be trickling down?
In my opinion, it's everyone's job. So not only the, let's say, head of DevOps, so they should make sure it is at least going there, that there are steps being taken to make sure that the culture gets inherited in the company. But for the people to actually do it, the people themselves need to carry it out, meaning that let's say daily syncs. Okay, we have daily syncs at work, and I actually is one of the advocates of doing that because I want to prevent silos. I want to prevent him doing this and me doing that, and we don't know what each other are doing. So once we do a daily sync, they update on their stuff. But then if they update only in their context and then nobody else understands in the table because they are the only ones who have the context, I ask, hey, can you give us more context about your task so everyone will understand what you're doing? So doing that is to help other people understand what is going on. And then this helps with collaboration, this helps with the knowledge sharing, and then bit by bit, if I ask it more, then maybe next time someone else will ask it, give us the context, or please share what you did here, or please someone knows how to do X in the group. So if the people from the inside are doing things to really to embody the DevOps culture, the communication, the collaboration, then bit by bit it will actually happen. This is what I think, and not because I see it happen all the time. If the manager asks, please share this, please do this, it doesn't really happen. And if it happens because they need to do it and not because they want to do it. So it needs to be from down up.
Should someone be tracking this evolution process, right? What gets tracked gets improved. Right? So if we are measuring, so if I just came into a company that is still trying to adopt, right, DevOps culture, and it used to take us, say, 3 days to figure out the source of a problem, right, root cause of an incident, right? Now, because of the sort of the push I'm making to improve our processes, right, now we reduce it to 2 days. Should I be tracking sort of this metadata, right, so that when I sit down with my manager or when I sit down with my manager's manager, right, to say, hey, so since I've been here and we started following this process, this practice, right, our time to resolution has dropped by 20%, 25%, whatever. So should I be taking on that additional responsibility of tracking this so I can show the actual business value, right, of these improvements?
I'd say find some tools that help you do that. But yeah, I think you're right. You do have to sort of track it. You are what you track. You are, aren't you? You are what you measure. I don't want to plug anything, but there are some tools which...
Where are the tools?
I don't know. Datadog. Okay. Brought to you by Datadog. Where's that Datadog guy? Exactly for that. Tools that do that and promote good practices and good culture and stuff. But I don't know. I dread the idea of having to make that kind of change without everybody being on board with it. That sounds tough.
Yeah, I mean, I understand what you said, Hila, about doing it bottom up, but it seems like your CTO should at least be supportive of this. And certainly for things like error budgets, like understanding that things need to fail a little bit in some cases would be something like the CTO's job, I think.
Yeah.
And actually, there is a thing called DORA metrics. I don't know who here knows what DORA metrics are. Okay, DORA metrics is basically a way to measure the development life cycle, to see how much it takes to get from pushing Go to GitHub to actual pushing it to production, how much time it takes to approve, review and approve pull requests. So this is the entire system. So I think and it just emerged in the last couple of years, I would say. So if there was this for software development lifecycle, I think there should be to extract metrics specifically for the DevOps cycle, at least after the CI happened and how things are handled in production, and then we can actually track it, because there are tools that track DORA metrics. So if it's done for DORA metrics, why not do it also for stuff related to production itself?
Yeah, and what does DORA stand for? It's DORA, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't remember.
Yeah, I can't remember. I was trying to Google it and no one says it.
Really?
Yeah.
DORA
Keep
metrics
getting Dora the
abbreviation?
Explorer websites?
Yeah. Yeah, and I get hooked on the episode and then I've stopped paying attention. DORA metrics. Go on.
While you're doing that, obviously we have we do want to have a sort of a Go slant, right, a Go take, right, on the DevOps sort of discussion here. I'm wondering, how does Go, right, help the whole culture, the the assimilation, if you will, right, of those practices. What role does Go play in that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know if Go does anything specific or different. I don't know. I mean, certainly instrumenting code and like, getting all those insights out of your systems, that's important. I suppose you have that in all the different technologies. But I know that like pprof, for example, like that was part of Go from the very beginning. And that made a big impact. You could really operate things a lot easier than it was before.
I remember Cameron's talk, right, put a lot of emphasis on sort of the use of Go for the stability, right, of systems. So I imagine that is probably one of the big roles that Go plays in building stable systems with less incidents.
Yeah, actually, that's a really good point. Sometimes just upgrading the language or the tool, things would break, and sometimes in unexpected ways that you hadn't considered before. Stability in the language and in the promises that it makes for sure helps there. I do think that's why Go is kind of like the language of the cloud. DORA metrics, by the way, stands for DevOps Research and Assessment.
But it still focuses on development lifecycle on the developer side, unless what happens after the code gets pushed. So, but some things can leverage to us as well. For example, we also have PRs. We should not push to main, So we can leverage that as well, but there should be, in my opinion, more specific metrics to check our cycle, because we operate a bit differently from the usual sprints that developers do. And in terms of Go, I can tell you my perspective. So a lot of tools that I use in my day-to-day are written in Go. Prometheus, Terraform, basically the entire Hashicorp stack is written in Go. And it's awesome for me because it's also easy to maintain. It is one binary. I don't need to deal with installations and anything like that. So for maintenance purposes, it's very, very easy to use.
Yeah, I was going to say one binary. The fact, not specific to Go by any means, but the fact that it's a typed language, I think, controversial opinion in the general development world, but probably not at this conference. The typed languages are safer. Fewer bugs get into production. And another thing, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, is that the fact that it's relatively easy to look at some Go code and understand what it does means that someone who's not the regular developer, an SRE or someone, of course, you don't want to be modifying code to fix an incident that you want to roll back or something. You don't want to. But in the worst case, reading the code and maybe being able to understand it is incrementally better with Go. Has anyone ever had to do that? I don't know. I've heard of situations like that.
Yeah, that is actually a really good point. I think testing also, the fact that testing was built into Go from the beginning. So testing is part of the Go culture. And of course, tests help with reliable systems. In fact, they're really the way to do it. You can push to main if your testing is that good as well, but people don't. No,
don't forget that Testify helps with tests.
Oh, Testify. By the way, all those projects you mentioned do use Testify. Jonathan.
So I want to, I've been hearing a lot lately, especially from companies that sell sort of observability products, that you should test in production. So when you mentioned pushing to main earlier, I kept thinking, testing in production. I think that too is a luxury in my mind.
There's also chaos engineering, and I personally don't know a lot of companies that use chaos engineering in their day-to-day. So there are a lot of stuff out there, but not really stuff that gets.
If you're not Netflix, you don't need chaos engineering. If you're not dealing at that scale. So yeah, some of these things do not apply to you.
Well, we have just 5 minutes left, and I'd like to open it up to questions. So let me step down and hand you the mic so we get it recorded, assuming this is being recorded. Does anyone have any questions for our panel? Not possible that nobody has any questions. Is it possible? We covered everything.
We've just done such a good job. That's what I'm thinking.
Yes.
Thank you very much for the panel. I would like to get to the focus of Go in DevOps. Is there something you would like to see in Go, in the standard library, in the tooling that the Go team provides, in third-party libraries that would help facilitate the growth of Go in the DevOps space?
I think like with open telemetry, I think is going to be big. I think open telemetry is going to become the way we all do this. So anything Go can do that just does open telemetry bits for you, I think would be great. I don't have any specifics, but yeah, I think anything like that where, you know, Prometheus does a good job of this. They give you like an HTTP proxy almost that you can just have in your code, and then that collects the metrics and interesting bits that you need. So anything like that that just makes it automatic for engineers, as long as it is like their standards that are, as long as they're standards that are, you know, accepted. OTel, I think, is probably a safe bet.
I think I can actually contribute to that question because some of the people in the metrics world, like Datadog and stuff, have asked us to add stuff so that you don't have to write any code. So to use OTel right now, you have to, and probably always, you'll have to write a little bit of extra code. But let's say you didn't write any code and you're some sort of proxy in a big system, and you want the, so currently a Go binary will not, a Go server will not propagate trace information. There are trace headers that go along with your HTTP request. So, you know, one of the things we could do, pretty small thing, is just to propagate those headers automatically in net HTTP. And there may be other things we can do. Felix talked about the execution tracer, which is something you can plug into and get this stream of events. Maybe we could have a way for people to plug in more events and metrics so that tools can so that some open telemetry collector can read that information, again, possibly without having to modify the code at all. I think that's one thing that we could do.
Yes, actually, Jonathan, if you could do that on the flight home, that would be amazing. Oh, one more down here. Oh.
Go ahead. Oh, okay.
Hello, my name is Con. I want to ask, as I can see, Go becoming to be a platform more than a standard language, programming language. Yes or no? As I can see, it's a lot of tooling, it's a lot of another things which helps us with our everyday job. And my question is, probably Go team have some plans for making its own CI/CD tooling inside Go or not?
Well, I think Go has always had that holistic idea of tooling plus language, like with GoFumped being in the first release and the Go tool and stuff. We don't have any plans for our own CI/CD system, no. But we do have that idea that the tooling and the language have to work together. There was one more question, and that will be our last one over there.
My name is Jahan, and thank you for delivering this insightful conversation around DevOps and Go. And throughout the conversation, I heard that there is certain practices that happening inside different scale of companies. And I would like to know your opinion about how would you categorize different scales and viable methods that can apply. You can put Go in the context, but anyway. So I'm interested in how you categorize the scale and viable practices. That's it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Well, certainly, I think you could safely say that if you've got small scale and like small team, you have to do less. If you have like not so many customers or things not hammering your service a lot, you have to do less. And then in some cases, I've seen cases where people overdo it. You know, some people reach, I don't know, would you reach for Kubernetes if you were just doing a little side project in the hope?
Have you ever heard of resume-driven development?
So, yeah.
So let me, to be frank, I've worked for very large companies and very small ones. I tend to prefer the very small ones because there are less bodies, less humans involved in the communication, and the more parties have to communicate, the harder I think things tend to get. It's not uncommon for during an incident at large companies for a lot of people to be going back and forth, cross-departmental, cross-team communication, and then you have this one person who knows exactly what the problem is. They just let everybody do the talking and they go and fix the problem and the incident is over. I've seen that happen time and again, right? But there's an overhead, there's a cost. And so think about it this way. Since we're talking Go, sometimes you can actually solve a problem just using sequential sort of a solution than to introduce, say, concurrency and Go routines and trying to now have worker pools and channel communication. The overhead of that, right, of the scheduler managing the overhead of that, right, can actually more add a negative impact in performance than actually doing it top-down non-concurrently, right? If you've never actually come across that as an example, come see me afterward. I'll actually show you code that actually exhibits that behavior, right? There's a cost, right, to managing multiple parties, managing communication across different threads, right? There's a cost to that, right? So the bigger the organization, the more people are involved, right? That's going to impact how fast you get things done. Obviously, the scale, right? At some point, your scale is going to dictate how many people you need to have on hand, depending on the kind of application that you have. So that's why I tend to prefer smaller teams, because there's fewer people involved in the process. But if the company's big enough, you don't have that choice, right? So then again, it always goes back to the culture of communication. How tight is your communication loop, right? How effectively are you communicating? Because at the end of the day, folks, every vendor is going to have a tool, the perfect tool that is trying to solve your problem. That is the business that we're in. Everybody's in this to make money. So they're going to have the perfect tool, the perfect graphing system. Grafana is perfect, but yeah. But you know, every company, right, is going to have the perfect solution for you, right? That's just the nature of it, right? But I think really what works, regardless of tooling helps. But what works regardless of all of that is having good communication patterns internally, whether you're big, whether you're small.
And in Israel, we actually have a saying for that. Whenever you want to prepare for something, we call it preparation for air conditioning, because whenever you need to set up an air conditioning, you need to set up the infrastructure and prerequisites in order to actually make it work. So we call it even in tech, whenever we want to, we start a project and then we actually discuss, do we need to do preparation for air conditioning, or it doesn't, it's like overbearing and over engineering stuff. So we always need to think about those two aspects, because this has a cost and this has a cost. If we don't think and plan ahead, we will regret not doing the preparation, but if we over-engineer, then we will regret it by time wasting and cost and all other stuff.
Okay, thanks everyone. That's all the time we have. Please join me in thanking our panel of DevOps experts. And Matt, back to you.
Thank you. And thanks for hosting that. Please thank Jonathan as well.